How's it going? David Carone here. At the end of Genesis chapter 3, we find Adam and Eve being expelled from the Garden of Eden. Then in chapter 4, we see that Adam and Eve come together to consummate their marriage. Eve becomes pregnant and she gives birth to Cain. Then she gives birth to his brother named Abel. The two boys grow up, and Cain takes care of cultivating the ground and Abel takes care of livestock. Well, one day comes along and they offer their sacrifices before God. And God rejects Cain in his offering, but he accepts Abel in his, and this causes a little bit of the problem. We're going to pick up the story in Genesis 4, verse 6. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Now Cain said to Abel his brother, "Let's go out to the field." While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you're under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Is sin able to crouch down like an animal? Does blood actually have a voice box that it can cry out? What about the ground? Does it have a mouth that can open? So what's really happening here? This is a literary device that authors use called personification. Now, personification is when an author writes about something that's non-human as if it is human. And if we go to broaden that definition a little, you would say it's anything that's non-living that's giving any living characteristics. Well, what does it actually do? Personification intensifies a situation, allowing the reader to get closer to the reality of what's actually going on in the story. We feel the meaning more personally and a lot more vividly through personification. Let's walk through a couple examples. God tells Cain that sin is crouching at the door and its desire is to have him. So what's God actually trying to get Cain to understand? Well, sin is not to be treated like it's an inanimate object, like a rock that just sits there and it has to be acted upon to get it to move. No. Sin is like a vicious, wild animal, and God is in effect saying, Cain, if you don't control sin, it's going to hunt you down and the attack will be unsurvivable. We know what happens to Cain. He succumbs to it, and it gets so bad in his heart and mind, he kills his brother. God was trying to protect him from that. So how can you and I use this? Well, this is the very beginning of the Bible, and it's the first time that the Bible uses the word sin. So now that we set the tone for what sin is, it's vicious, it's ravenous, it's attacking, it's trying to get us. We can treat sin with a lot more serious than if it's some passive element or some social disturbance in our lifestyle or something like that, some kind of behavior we learned. It's far more than that, and we got to treat it that way. Well, God tells Cain in our second example, "Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." This helps us in understanding how we see injustice versus how God sees injustice. It's as if Cain killed his brother, maybe buried him or threw him in the woods somewhere, and can forget about the whole matter to appease his conscience. It's not even an issue. But God cannot unsee that. He cannot not know that. It's like it cries out to him. And that shows us how vivid this is. Injustice cries out to God wherever it happens. And that helps us to understand if that's how God sees it, maybe we need to see it just like God does and treat it a lot more serious than we really think it is at times. In our third example, God tells Cain that the ground that opened up its mouth to receive his brother's blood has rejected him. Well, like we said, the ground doesn't actually have a mouth, but here, remember, man was made to rule over creation. He's supposed to take care of and cultivate the ground, the Garden of Eden, and expand it throughout the whole earth. Well, instead of that, you've actually done something very grotesque and unnatural in making the ground drink your brother's blood. And it's a horrible picture. But it helps Cain understand that wherever he goes and wanders about, we see the ground like a living thing rejecting Cain. he can never plant ever again. It's never going to grow for him, and that's the curse upon him. So his sin is so serious, even the ground that he was supposed to rule over that supports him has now rejected him. Well, personification, as you can see, plays an important role in giving a sense of aliveness to God's word and his message to us wherever it's used in the Bible, which is many places. But I want to ask a question. Does it matter? What happens if we miss personification? Well, it plays into how we interpret the Bible. For example, with sin, God says sin is crouching at your door and its desire is to have you. If we don't understand it as personification, then we see sin as an actual living entity that's outside of us. It's trying to get us, and we'll defend ourselves from it. But you know what it allows us to do? We can escape responsibility now. It's sin that came after me. I had to do it. The devil made me do it. These people made me do it. My bad influences or whatever. Sin is always a choice that we make, but we're supposed to see it as such a vicious thing and such a bad thing that we react by treating it the right way and pushing back on it and overcoming it through God's Spirit as Christians. But you don't want to look at sin as an outside entity, because then you lose your own sense of responsibility over it. Well, I learned a lot about personification, and I hope you did too. Till next time, have a good day. Thanks for watching.